There is much to be said about the troubled production of Werner Herzog's 1982 masterpiece Fitzcarraldo. From the tensions between director and actor, the exploitation of indigenous people, countless injuries, and even deaths of those who were hired to work on the project. But today I want to take a look at one moment in particular within the film, and how two acting greats approached the scene differently. Jason Robards, initially cast as the titular character, became ill with dysentery early into production and ended up leaving the project, being replaced by Kinski. But there is still some remaining footage of his portrayal as Fitzcarraldo, specifically a scene as he stands atop of a bell tower and announces to the world his intentions of building an opera house in the depths of the Peruvian jungle. Now, how do Robards and Kinski interpret the text differently? How do their performances affect the story, from their camera awareness to their physicality? Let's take a closer look. Robards' initial characterization of Fitzcarraldo appears to the audience as being the outcome of a drunken whim. In his depiction, as he announces to the natives his want to build an opera house, his demeanour is clumsy and awkward, punctuated by uneasy laughter. Even though the portrayal only lasts for half a minute here, it clearly lacks the needed depth for a character like Fitzcarraldo. We never get a sense that his demeanour was intended to reflect a character who was grappling with uncertainty, or that his awkward laughter was to cover a sense of vulnerability. It rather comes across as forced laughter to cover up the actor's discomfort within the scene. His lack of power and conviction isn't nuanced, but rather reveals an actor who is uncertain of the significance of the moment, failing to capture the intended depth and nuanced emotions of the complicated figure. This might have been due to a lack of communication between actor and director, or perhaps the personality of Fitzcarraldo simply changed while production was shut down, to better fit the skills of Kinski as an actor. Here we have Kinski's performance, which embodies a growing madness within Fitzcarraldo. He portrays the character as being fixated on his goal of building an opera house. He is the manifestation of a man consumed by one obsession, and one obsession only. Unlike Robards, he isn't simply calling out to the locals making a statement, but is in essence taking the church hostage until he is granted the ability to achieve his want and desire.
This church remains closed till this town has its opera house.
Starting the scene out of breath, speaking at a normal level, it reveals to us the burden Fitzcarraldo feels as if he is carrying solely on his shoulders, something that would not have been possible if he was atop of the church with an assistant. It is his obsession, no one else's, which makes the build-up to his explosive energy all the more effective, as we initially get to see the vulnerability behind his pursuit. And perhaps there is even a sense of fear hidden behind his eyes, afraid of the possibility that he might not be able to achieve his goal. Robards' camera awareness may not seem as important until specifically compared to Kinski, whose presence is tenfold. Robards is unsure as to where he should direct Fitzcarraldo's gaze. Should he look to the space behind? Or maybe to the side of where the camera is placed? There is nothing inherently wrong in terms of his camera awareness. It's not as if he is looking directly into the lens, but rather there is just something missing, something that Kinski is able to capture. Kinski's camera awareness is an unbelievably powerful tool, and a focal point right from the opening moments of the scene. He demands the audience's attention, suddenly appearing in frame in a tight close-up, creating anticipation for what he is about to say and do. Perhaps this all stems from the actor's egotistical desire to appear as big as possible in the frame, but it is effective nonetheless. Whereas we might feel disconnected with Robards as he announces his intentions, here we feel a sense of intimacy with Kinski's Fitzcarraldo, as if he is confiding directly with us, setting the tone and urgency for what is about to come. Robards' physicality within the scene also comes across as awkward and restrained. His spatial awareness is lacking, and Robards himself seems hesitant to move from his initial mark, creating a disconnect between the character and the setting. Perhaps he is also negatively impacted due to the fact he must share the frame with his assistant, portrayed by Mick Jagger, limiting his ability to interact with his surroundings. Their dynamic lacks fluidity, and as a pair they never seem to gel together, particularly in a moment where they both awkwardly reach for the bell, which Jagger ends up pulling first. This negatively conforms to how Robards' performance lacks power, and how his movement diminishes the importance of his want to build an opera house, with how even his assistant seems to have more enthusiasm towards completing the task than he does. In contrast to Robards' portrayal, Kinski brings an explosive energy to his performance, which intrigues us regarding Fitzcarraldo as a character. Even though we might not particularly like him, or understand why he must have his opera house so desperately, his energy makes us go along with him. He darts from side to side of the bell tower of the church, covering every square inch. He wants to get his message out to every single person, yelling in every single direction. Where it felt as if Robards was trapped within his surroundings, I personally think that with Kinski, it is as if he cannot be contained. He throws his whole body behind every movement. When he sounds the chimes of the bell, his whole body contorts with it, a physical manifestation of Fitzcarraldo's emotional investment in his goal. It's not that the chiming of the bells is something he does just because they are there, and because he can, but rather because he has to. Kinski enhances what could be a forgettable scene into something dramatic and of great importance to the overall narrative. My intentions were never to criticise Robards' talent as an actor, but rather to highlight how two all-time great actors can approach the same scene to completely differing effects. To show how their acting styles influence our perceptions of character, and how that might go on to influence the entire narrative as a whole.